How you doing, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a couple days since my last upload, but that's because I've been kind of working on something a little bit different. So the last couple days, as I've been working on my free-to-play account in Raid and doing a lot of that other stuff, there's another game that's kind of been on my radar from the beginning, and that game is called Godforge. Now, Godforge is a game being developed by it's actually being developed by a Raid creator by the name of HellHades. And I remember HellHades was actually like one of the first content creators I began watching when I really got into Raid. And when he announced that he was going to be developing a game, I was over the moon. And now we've come to the point where we're only, I think, according to what they were saying, maybe 2 to 3 months out from beta, and maybe seeing a full release by the end of this year. Really cool, and I love the engagement that he's been having with a lot of his fellow content creators in the space. I mean, I've been doing Raid content, but I've been doing it for a week. These guys have been doing it for years. And it really got me to thinking, because I saw a collab that he had done with a fellow creator by the name of Colred. Now, Colred, I have a lot of respect for, because he is like an OG free-to-play content creator. There's a couple kicking around, but he's definitely one that has been in it for the long haul, and I have a lot of respect for him. And they were doing a podcast, and they were talking about, of course, Colred's forte, which is free to play, and talking with HellHades about whether or not the game would be free to play friendly. And questions were being asked, you know, what makes a game free to play friendly? What are the things you look for? And as I was watching the podcast, and I mean this respectfully, I feel like at some point the plot was missed a little bit. Some of the things they spoke about, I felt, were less of things that make free to play friendly, or make a game free to play friendly, and more about what just makes a game good. What makes, you know, one of those, I guess, scenarios where every game should have this. This is not unique to free to play. So I began kind of thinking to myself, as someone who is doing a free to play account, has been making videos about it, who has had some very strong opinions about some of the practices that Plarium has shown with their game, I began asking myself, what do I think makes a game free to play friendly? And I figured, you know what, why not make it a video and see how it does? And you know, I joked about 2 or 3 people watching my videos, but my videos have gotten 5 or 6 views. Some of them are up to 7 or 8. So, you know, if 10 people watch this video and one of them happens to be HellHades, this is just kind of me weighing in on my opinion on some of the things that I think weren't really addressed during that podcast. All right, so number one, in my mind, what makes a game truly free to play friendly is mirrored progression. And the idea of mirrored progression is that some people have lots of time on their hands, and some people have a lot of money in their pocket. And both of those people in a truly free to play friendly game should be able to exist kind of at an equilibrium. The idea that one person having 12 hours a day to play a game versus someone who can drop $150, $1,000 a month, their progression should somewhat look the same. The idea that if you don't have a lot of time to grind, you can spend money to catch up to the people who have been grinding for 10 to 12 hours a day. Now, I understand that a lot of games don't do this because, well, unfortunately, this might be a little bit inflammatory, but I'm going to be honest with you. This is just what I think. I think a lot of people play these games, and I say a lot of people, I don't know the metrics. I actually imagine that they're probably the vast minority of the player base, but they might be the majority of the cash revenue coming into the game. But I feel like a lot of people don't want, they want a game to be pay to win. They want to be able to spend money to beat people, to do better than people. They don't want any equals in terms of effort. They only want their equals to be the people who are going to spend as much as them. Now, for me, this mindset's a bit of a slippery slope, because while there are people, who can spend my yearly earnings on raid in a week and not bat an eye, there are people who will spend an amount of money that to those people would be life-changing without batting an eye. There's the idea that somebody's always got a bigger wallet than you. And so in games like, for instance, I played a lot of World of Warcraft, played a lot of games like League of Legends. When it's effort and skill is the barrier, then what you have is a lot of people, that's really when the game is the healthiest. What I see with a lot of gacha games is they come out, people dump tens of thousands of dollars into their accounts. The kind of ecosystem that they all exist in bubbles, because quite frankly, a lot of these games, if you are a free-to-play player or even a low spender, and I understand the arguments from both sides, because at the end of the day, this is a company and they need to make money. And if you are free to play, you are not giving that company a return on their effort, right? Whether or not you think a game is worth your money is entirely up to you, but the facts of the matter are that people spend time and money to develop this game. And if you're not giving them any money, then you are not contributing to the success of their business. And so I can understand why a lot of companies probably don't look very favorably upon free-to-play players. However, there are a lot of people like myself who have spent money in this game, but you hit a point where it just never feels enough. It just never feels... For me, it was when Mythicals came out. And it just felt like all of the money that I had spent on my account up until that point, I probably should have just lit it on fire or flushed it down the toilet. And don't get me wrong, I still have plenty of decent champions, but for instance, if I really cared about PvP in Raid, and I'm just going to rip the band-aid off, it is not skill-based. It is entirely who's got the bigger wallet. Or in a niche scenario, who is incredibly lucky. Because, I mean, there are maybe some people out there who have pulled 10 primal shards and gotten 5 mythicals, or gotten the exact champions that really excel in PvP. But for me, it just felt like, or it began to feel like, no amount of money I spent on Raid was ever going to be enough. It was just never going to be enough. And there are a lot of people who like the system to be that way. They don't have the time to put into the game. And so they would rather just crush you with their wallet. I understand why games pander to these people, because ultimately as a business, they are the people that are the best for my business. But I don't understand the mindset fully, because I believe you do need free-to-play players, or at least low spend players. You need the vast majority of people who are going to sit at the bottom of the spending brackets to boost the community numbers. Because once those people begin to leave, and once people begin to feel like the money they invest into your game is no longer giving them any returns, they're going to leave. And once they leave, it's only a matter of time before your game slowly collapses in on itself, where you used to have a scenario where, you know, some spenders could beat free-to-play players and that felt really good. But now it's slowly starting to be, well, there are no more free-to-play players. There are no more low spenders. And so now all of the whales have to fight each other in an ever shrinking pond until most of them begin to just walk away. And then your game just collapses in on itself. I think in this scenario, that's why I think a mirrored progression, if you could tune it to be somewhat close. At the end of the day, if you still make it to where spenders have the advantage over people who put in absurd amounts of time, that's fine. But you want that gap to be as small as possible to where those people who just want to spend money to win feel like they are winning, but the people who are low spend or free to play don't feel like the gap is insurmountable. That's just kind of how I think about it. And, you know, whether or not that happens, it'll be, well, I guess it'll be proven in a short time. And I really do want Godforge to succeed. I've been super hyped about it ever since the announcement. So, but that's just kind of my first take. All right, number 2. And this one is knowing what you're paying for. Now, this doesn't really speak to free-to-play friendly people, but I do believe that most free-to-play people, unless you're taking it as a challenge or it's a niche for your YouTube videos or whatever, I feel like a lot of free-to-play players, unless they're really at a point in their lives where they have no disposable income, most free-to-play players could probably be pushed into spending a little bit of money if they felt like that little bit of money would make a difference. Now, a big one with that is knowing exactly what you're paying for at every point in the game. Now, I spoke about this when I talked in my shard video about the honestly kind of gross tactics that Plarium uses to get you to spend, especially when it comes to those pack strings, where you know what the first one is and you know what the second one is, or the last one is, but you don't know the in-between. And I think, to me, that's absolutely disgusting. And if I saw that in Godforge, I would be very, very disappointed, because to me, that is it's just predatory. And those are the moments where you're proving that you are not consumer friendly, flat out. As I said before, shards at the end of the day, or in Godforge, whatever they'll be called, that you pull your gods or champions or whatever from, this is obviously a gambling thing. Let's just call it as it is. And I think that's fine. Adults are, at the end of the day, responsible for themselves. And a lot of adults like to gamble. That's just the fact of the matter. I enjoy opening shards and seeing what I get. So I don't think you don't ban those things. But I think the biggest thing to be free to play, and this is actually more low spender, less free to play, because people who are purely free to play are never going to spend a dime. But I do believe that there is a happy medium where maybe you can be a low spender, sometimes free to play, sometimes. I mean, these are not, to me, they're not a yes or. I know in Raid, people get very caught up in the, oh, well, he's never spent a dime on this account. And that might be true. And it probably is true for a lot of people. But I don't think that that's necessarily a great mindset for an average person to have, because if you can afford to throw a company that is providing you with a game that you are enjoying for tens of hundreds of hours, giving them some money is not it's not evil. It's not the worst thing in the world. In fact, I think some people should be encouraged to give these companies a little bit of money. By all means, don't take a mortgage out on your house just to buy champions in raid. But if you've played raid for hundreds of thousands of hours or whatever, what have you, go buy a gem pack, go buy the mini mix pack, go buy some small cheap things that realistically say, hey, I think you're doing a good job. And I feel more passionately about this with Godforge because Godforge is kind of they do have investors, but at the end of the day, they're a very grassroots kind of company that came up in this community. So the biggest thing is free-to-play people could be low spenders if they feel like their money is a good investment. And one of the things that really helps with that is making sure that players know at all points exactly what that money is going to get them. If it's shards, they know exactly what the percentage chances they have are. They know exactly what their mercy is. Personally, for me, I think to be free to play or any kind of consumer friendly, I think the game should track your mercy for you, personally. And if you don't, people are going to do it anyway, and people are going to find ways to do it. So you might as well just do it for them. And that's a really good, that's a show of good faith to the community. The last one I have here is meaningful interactions between spenders and free-to-play people. This is a big one because I feel as though a community is super solid when both really heavy spenders and free-to-play players feel like they can come together and interact meaningfully. Now, the game that comes to mind when I actually think about this is a game I played a lot of and still play occasionally, called Warframe. Warframe, to me, is one of the gold standards of free-to-play games for one reason and one reason only. The premium currency that you get in the game, the currency that you can only buy with money, can be traded between players. And so what you have is you have an ecosystem where people who have a lot of time on their hands will do a lot of farming. They'll farm for weapons and mods and blueprints and all this other stuff that, is part of the game cycle. And you have the spenders who you don't have a lot of time, but what you can do is, rather than grind for this mod, spend 10 hours in a game trying to grind for this mod, I can pay somebody the premium currency for that mod. They can then use that premium currency to go buy something else, something that you can't grind for, like extra slots for warframes, or extra slots for weapons, or skins, or color palettes, things that are not inherently available to free-to-play players, but there's never a point where a free-to-play player, if they're not somewhat savvy and willing to put in the time, they can have access to it. And that causes meaningful interactions within the community, because what you find is that there is no kind of classism, I guess would be the best way to look at it. There's no classism between players. The spenders need the free-to-play players. The free-to-play players need the spenders. And everybody just kind of orbits around each other, contributing to the overall community. Now, whether or not that would actually happen, whether or not you'd be allowed to trade currencies within Godforge remains to be seen, because what I do know is the more I try to think about it, I can't even think of another game where the premium currency is tradable. There are things that are tradable, but the premium currency usually exists outside of the game, really, and only exists for people who are willing to spend the money. Now, I don't know what that looks like as a company in terms of profit margins. I imagine it probably lowers your profit margins a little bit, but then maybe it raises it because you know that your premium currency has more buying power. when there are things not in the shop that I can't buy, but a player can go grind that for me and then I can throw them 10 platinum for it, you know? So in that scenario, I'm more likely to buy platinum, and platinum being the premium currency in Warframe, because I know that my buying power with the premium currency is infinite. It's not just the things that Digital Extremes, which is the company that makes Warframe, it's not just what they put in the marketplace, it's anything in the game, anything that can be traded. I can pay somebody to do this if I don't have the time. And I have done a lot where there's a mod that I really want that is super meta for a specific weapon or Warframe, and I don't have the time to grind for hours at a time to try and get this mod super low drop rate, or maybe there's no way to get that mod at the current moment because the place you farmed for it got cycled out, and so now I buy some platinum and I give that to a player, and then the player gives me what I want. And because it's done in game and there's an in-game system for trading, you don't have to worry about being scammed because you always see exactly what you're getting before you hit that trade button. Before you click the little check mark that says complete trade, you show exactly how much platinum you're giving. The other player shows exactly what they're trading for that platinum, whether it be mod, blueprint, whatever. I think that would be a great system in Godforge, but I don't know exactly how to implement it perfectly or even correctly. Whether that means that if I have an account and I've pulled my 7th Thor and I really don't need him, maybe I can sell him to somebody who needs him for some premium currency, or vice versa. I'm not 100% certain, but I feel like in a scenario like that, that really is super free to play friendly, because it's rewarding people's time investment for the people who have more time. Because generally speaking, the people who are free to play, if you are free to play, you accept that your time is the currency versus USD. That's just the fact of the matter. And so knowing that if I'm free to play, my time invested will get me as much or just as much as a spender is huge. Same thing as a spender, if there are things in the game that require lots of time grinding, but I don't have that time, but I can give someone some currency or something to get that thing from them, then, I think that would go a long way to building a very healthy and strong community, which during these podcasts is something that has constantly been stated over and over again, is how important it is to build community. And I want to believe it because I look at a lot of these guys and I see a bunch of nerds. I see a bunch of gamers who, obviously gacha games are super profitable, but they're also thinking, hey, what is the kind of game that I'd want to play? Because at the end of the day, we're all coming from a gacha game. Like, HellHades made his YouTube career, as far as I know, through playing a gacha game and being very passionate about it. So, I think these 3 points are very big for kind of talking about what makes a game free to play and really what makes a game free to play, low spend, and at the end of the day, consumer friendly. Because at the end of the day, I am not going to kind of get on a soapbox and talk about the, free to play is bad for companies, whaling out is bad for the community, any of that stuff. But it is important to me to see that a game treats its player base with some dignity and respect. So that's been my 2 cents on the matter. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment, like and subscribe, all that fancy YouTube stuff. Did I touch on the things that you are concerned about when it comes to games like this? Is there something I missed? Let me know. In the meantime, That's all I've got for today, and I'll see you guys next time.